Shalom, everybody. Today we're going to be learning a little bit about Channukah as it relates to our inner work. This is mostly adapted by Rav Gottlieb's class given 2 years ago called the Inner Work of Channukah, and I also have my own additions into the article. Just going to pull up the live stream in case there's a chat. All right. In Kabbalah, it's known that the greater coarseness that the vessel has, the greater light it can draw. What's the point? Simple. The greater the ego, the will to receive for oneself alone, the greater the distance a person has from altruism, the greater need the individual has for the Creator's light in order to help correct him. It's specifically the individuals who are within the lowliness of their authentic self-awareness, being that they serve themselves and themselves alone. These are the individuals who can experience the greatest revelations of godliness, being the great pleasure and ecstasy of reaching the consciousness of pure giving. And from the states of pure giving, then we also can experience other delights in the treasure house of the Creator. And this isn't just individuals who are within their authentic self-awareness, but also people in general who are struggling in life, people who are not considered so normative to the mainstream. Also is hinting to those individuals in particular and the potential that they have being massive. Thus specifically people who have fallen from the flock, those who are seemingly not normal, who are not standard, not mainstream, the ones who ask questions and argue within themselves regarding their inner work, regarding Judaism in general. They are the ones who are most successful to reveal and experience the greatest lights. They specifically have the greatest potential to not only reveal this to themselves, but to the whole world, as we are all integrated as one soul. As mentioned in Matan Torah, one man with one heart. Thus, these individuals do not need to consider themselves bad or lowly. On the contrary, these individuals and everybody at large need to have bitachon, confidence, emuna, faith, in their special, unique paths, as our sages have taught us, that tzaddikim cannot stand in the place of Bali Tshuva. Important to mention the principle that all the ego and personal turmoil we may notice in our inner work is in essence not us. It is simply the garment of our pure, perfect, shining soul. And the bad does not pertain to our true self, our true essence being the godly soul, the nefesh elokis. So too when we interact with others, to know that what we might deem to be negative behavior or negative action is not them. It is the outermost expression that is their klipa, that is their lowliness. It is not their soul in truth. And this is the primary matter of Channukah. The Channukah candle is built from a vessel, oil within, and the petila, the wick. Without the petila, the wick, it's impossible to light the candle. Our sages teach us that petila is related to pitalto, a crooked matter, something serpentine. In Yiddish, the taf is pronounced as a saf, so it's psila, something puzzle, invalid. Specifically when a person feels himself to be invalid, to be doing invalid things by the fact that he's ensconced in his egoism and all that he does in Torah and mitzvot is under the umbrella of being invalid because it's really for himself and it's not truly for God, it's not truly for others. Denying Hashem, strange thoughts, corrupted desires, and the like. All of this specifically tells a person not only are they on the true path because they have the challenge, and that's a hint to them being on the road, on the plane to the destination, so to speak, being in ultimate connection with the Creator, but also that they have the greatest capacity to feel the light of Hashem higher and higher. Through the Tzila, the wick, one can light up the candles. As the candle of Hashem is called the soul of man, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. There is no doubt the greatest value in life is a connection to the Creator. Just like an animal cannot appreciate the true depth and beauty of music and dance, so too man cannot experience the ultimate pleasure other than his soul, and therefore in essence, Hashem. V'amdu ragalav bayom hahu al har hazeitim. And on that day, his feet shall not stand. On that day, his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives. By means of our difficulties, even at times, being crushed, squeezed, we produce oil. That's why the Jewish people are compared to olives. We deal with both the suffering of life and the suffering of bitter inner work to achieve a more refined state. We suffer to live in Israel, Yashar Keil, the consciousness of living in straight to God, of trying to be the Shem Shemayim, trying to be in a mode that's only for the Creator. So we suffer to uphold the Torah and mitzvot in an altruistic way. And so too we release the oil as we're squeezed and crushed like olives. This oil in itself from the suffering is the Torah and mitzvot that we do. The same oil that symbolically enters into the vessel of the Channukah candle, along with the ptila, psila, psolit, our egoism. And by these means, by this pain, we're able to light the fire of our prayers and rise in yearning towards our one and only source. By means of noticing the invalidness, by means of the suffering and trial and tribulation of trying to really live a life of Torah and mitzvot, which is very challenging to try to rise above one's ego. By this means, one can become aware, and by the awareness of where they are and where they'd like to be, so too is aroused prayer. Along with the olive is the olive branch. Rav Ginsburg Shlita says that alei zayit, olive branches, are the same numerical value as shalom olam, world peace, or an eternal world. You can interpret it as saying we are the olam, the same way we are said to be like both olives, and we're also said to be like olive branches. A man is a small world, a small universe per se. We, at the deepest core, are shalom. We have shalom. We are perfect and one with the Creator. To reveal this ultimate inner truth, as it contrasts with the psila, the psolit within, we must refine ourselves through Torah and mitzvot. The Rebbe Shlita in his class mentioned that man tries all types of alternatives, but there isn't any true alternative to have a relationship with the King of all kings. The true meaning of life is to connect to the King of all kings, and not to give any tangible value to material, egoistic endeavors. Also, breathing, meditations, and other practices of the East. It can bring a person to some type of connection, it's true. But there was no comparison to the path of the Torah and mitzvot. 613 paths of elevation to bring one up to the spiritual level and condition of loving people and loving the Creator. Important to note that the breathing, the meditation, and the like are within Jewish sources and can be great tools to regulate one's consciousness to be one of emunah and positivity. Every moment we can uphold the mitzvot of emunah and giving, as every moment a person thinks about the Creator, Shiviti Hashem le'negdi tamid, he is doing the mitzvah of emunah. As the Baal Shem Tov has reminded us, one is found where one's thoughts are. This action, because what can be in one's thoughts, is also an action. If we employ the thought, if we're making effort to visualize and have the thought, that's also an action. It's an action of the mind. This action impresses our consciousness eternally. If a person thinks about Hashem and visualizes, imagines how he is enveloped in every detail of reality, this is the reality for the person. The more one can focus on this, the more the individual is existing and impressing an eternal spiritual condition. With this said, assuming the breathing meditation is focused on the Creator, then they are doing a most wonderful mitzvah. If one is with their spouse, their family, whatever physical condition they are in, they should do their best to rise above the physical vision and imagine Edom Avado, get into even a meditative state, so to speak, and imagine that it's all the Creator. And these thoughts of emunah, these thoughts of positivity and goodness of the other, this provides sustenance and nourishment and joy to our souls. Each and everything that one thinks in regards to others and their benefit, that stays for eternity, and also provides one with vessels for the Creator's light. The Rebbe Shlita said this past Shabbos, when we think a positive thought about someone else, that's called Mashiach. That's a lesson in itself, but I'll leave it at that for you to meditate on. Shalom, Flower Powers, NZ, New Zealand. Michael, great to hear from you. Let's continue. Wishing you and everyone else the most wonderful Channukah, just as a reference before I forget. When a person lights the Channukah candles, one should intend one's heart and mind that when the Creator showed his might in miracles in the days of old, being that the weak defeated the strong, the minority defeated the majority, so too we want the same now. Because the history and the story of the Jewish people is not just history. It's an active story of us and our inner processes of soul. Meaning we can be going through the entire episode of the Maccabees right here, right now. It doesn't have to be Hanukkah specifically to experience that tangibly, as we all go through the conditions throughout all of Tanakh. So, we want to serve the Creator. We want to focus on our inner work. We want the minority to defeat the majority. We want the aspect of giving, which is one, Yashar Kel, Yisrael within, to defeat the nations of the world within, which are 70 aspects, the 7 midos, the character traits within us. Why is it 70? There's 10 spheres within every sphere. So it's 7 midos times 10. We have 70 nations. So when we're lighting the candles, we're to intend ourselves to be victorious in attempting to focus on building and achieving our desire to give. That Israel will win, being our soul, the Nefesh Elokis, and unveiling it at the greatest level. Why? Again, because the whole point of our life is to come to similarity of form, to Devekut, the ultimate connection with Source, as it is taught, just as he is compassionate, so too you should be compassionate. In contrast, there are many other Kabbalistic intentions, holy names and their fusions. It should be noted that the Baal Sulam, at least not from what I have found or can recall, nor have I heard from the Rebbe Shlita in a general class format for the general populace, like myself at least, that we are specifically to employ these names and use these matters. But I believe the teaching is valuable to ingrain a sense of godless, a sense of greatness, of the all-encompassing, unified system that is reality by the view and lens of Torah and Mitzvot through its inner dimension. Especially in this generation that needs it so much, as it's dry and dark out there. So I've read this Torah, if I'm not mistaken, in the name of the Arizal. I read an English translation, albeit, on Chabad.org. And I also heard it recently from Rav Daniel Katz. The idea is that we have three different zivugim in the spiritual worlds, in the consciousness of man. Three different unions. The male aspect of the Creator as he relates to creation through the vessel of names. As Chesed, for example, loving kindness, has the name Kel, Aleph and Lamed. Gevura at times has the name Elokim. It's regards to din, strength, might, judgment, and therefore takes a feminine form. Male and female are representing the essence spiritually. So we have three different unions. Every male aspect is Shem Havaya, Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, which is the numerical value of 26. Then you have the feminine aspects of Malchut, Gevura, Bina, each one relating to the different parts of the spiritual body, the head, the torso, and the end of the body. So you have three different unions. You have Shem Havaya with Adnos, Aleph, Daled, Nun, and Yud. You have Shem Havaya with Elokim. And you have Shem Havaya with Ekia. Shem Ekia is related to Bina. There's different parameters, but this is what we're going with right now. So, again, these are representing the levels of Rosh being Bina, Toch being Gevura, and Sof being Malchut. Therefore, it's relating to Chabad Chagat Nehim in general. Chochma, Bina Dat, Chesed Gevur Tiferes, Netzach, Hod Yesod, and Malchus. The numerical value, the gematria, of these three unions, Havaya with Adnos, Havaya with Elokim, and Havaya with Ekia, equals the gematria of 250. 250 is the same gematria as Ner, candle. Meaning to say that the same way that Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, the candle of the Creator, is the soul of man, so too the soul of man is a complete system. And that complete system includes, in its most refined form, a unity, a balance, a completeness of self in all aspects of receiving and giving, assuming it's intended towards the Creator. I don't desire to go so much. There's plenty more to be said in regards to the names, but I, for one, even at that level, am just inspired by the teaching to paint, again, the unity and the interconnectedness of all of Torah. But this reminds me of a story I very recently heard from the Rebbe Shlita. He said, quote, I remember once I was in Bnei Brak. There was an individual who learned Kabbalah, not ours, and he asked, quote, what kavanot, what intentions do you guys use for Sfirat HaOmer? And the Rebbe responded to him, we intend to transform ourselves from being an animal to becoming a human. And he went, what? That's for kids. We intend with lights, Tiferes of Chesed, Gevur of Netzach. What we learned from this is that it pays to be simple. A simple intention of transforming ourselves from egoistic to altruistic, and either feeling that desire in one's heart to transform, or at the very least wanting to want to transform, which is still considered transforming, that's transformational. One acknowledges their lowliness, like the wick, the pasila, the pasolit, the invalidness of his inner work, and understanding, okay, this is where I'm holding today. I want to do things because I want reward in this world and the next. And I know that I want that, and it's not so comfortable for me. And I want to develop myself to be able to do things just for the sake of others, just for the sake of the Creator. In the meantime, okay, at least I'm aware of my opportunity. In contrast, that individual who said, "Oh, we're intending with lights," and he looked at the inner work of the simple kavana, the simple intention of transforming oneself from egoistic to altruistic, as being something lowly. So that means that he already thought of himself, at least in that moment, as being righteous, as being complete. That he didn't have to deal with that inner work. So that individual would rather meditate on holy names than meditate on the transformation. The truth is, depending on a person's condition, on a person's level, why not both? But first and foremost, the ultimate focus should be on the transformation, the desire of the heart to change. And we should be careful to be aware of our spiritual condition and know that those who have achieved high spiritual levels, states of consciousness, by means of refining their ego, okay, they can deal with those names. They know what they're doing. If it inspires one and they're still intending to fix their desire and come to this desire to give, okay, Seder, teach their own. But again, the Baal Salam did not particularly describe the necessity of that, rather the simple intention of transformation. Again, if one's employing such tools to meditate on, and the desire is to focus on each mentality, the consciousness of Chabad, the emotions of Chagat, the behaviors of Nehim, as Chassidut in general describes the spheros in regards to our intellectual, emotional, behavioral bodies, okay, great, why not? But to think of himself as doing big things and focusing the light alone, not so much. Those who go on the path of truth, their lives are filled with problems and difficulties. From the side of our nature, we want to rise and rise, go from strength to strength. But what's wrong with the dissension? Light and darkness, as the benefit of the light is noticed within the darkness. A very important principle by the Bala Sulam is that the greatest time of danger for an individual in their inner work is during the aliyah, the elevation. The greatest sins are done in a state of elevation, not dissension like we may think. Why? When one is high on the light, so to speak, they may forget the Creator, or even worse, think of themselves to have merited the light by their own work, as opposed to accepting that anything they have is only by means of the Creator's infinite kindness and mercy. And that's why they're experiencing the sweetness in the Torah and the mitzvot, not because they did some major work on themselves. And thus they would blemish his gifts if they were to do this, by not appreciating and thanking the source of all for what he gives. This is why it is extremely important in a time of elevation to actualize the lights, the inspiration, the fire, and put it into mitzvot, thought, speech, and action. But create a movement, put the fire into the world, brand Hashem's name somewhere, somehow, some way by means of Torah and mitzvot. If one just stays back and enjoys the lights and doesn't do anything with it other than sitting with it, then I've heard the Rebbe describe it as falling into the category of demons and evil spirits, meaning aspects of our consciousness that are not in line with actualizing goodness. Something that stops us in between. We can do so good, and yet we fall back and just fall to the high and enjoy. You gotta do. So, when someone's in elevation, they should renew one's covenant, one's relationship with the Creator. In a time of dissension, a person shouldn't feel failure, depression, low-spirited, in that he doesn't have elevation. Rather, he should make use of this condition to pray, to cry out, to grow in his connection with the source of all, to grow in Emunah, for the Creator, to bring him out of the pit, to cry out for the Creator, to help him out of his darkness. The pit, of course, representing the lack of connection, the lack of Emunah. Michael asks, so should I ask and expect from God? I've heard from the Rebbe Shlita, a general principle in our inner work, being ask for the absolute maximum, particularly as it pertains to spirituality. We want maximum connection. Shem, give me dveikut, give me the ultimate connection with you. And we should be happy with the minimum. Ask for max, but acknowledge that whatever you're given, whatever you have in the moment, is exactly what the Creator thinks you should have. And therefore, Sameach b'chelki, happy with my portion. That's hard work. That is an opportunity to employ Emunah. But that's the general principle. In our prayers, don't hold back. Ask for it all. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says to Rabbi Natan, who he noticed was missing a button on his jacket, did you pray to Hashem to fix your button? He said, well, it's just a button. He said, it was crazy for him to imagine that there was an opportunity to not unify with the Creator and ask for something as simple as a button. Why not? You should ask for everything. And be happy with the minimum, whatever we're given. Hope that answers your question. Let's continue. There is a foundational principle of Judaism that nothing is random. There's right and left in Judaism, and right generally, as it pertains to our relationship with the Creator, right is the love that draws us forward. And the left is considered that which deflects and pushes us back. Hashem pushes us back at times, in order that we are drawn even closer, as the benefit of the light is noticed in the darkness. Within the pain itself, within the shock and the turmoil, a person needs to focus on the Creator, as He is found within the pain, within the negative thoughts. And thus when a person is pained, they may long for connection back to Source. So too says the Baal Shem Tov, when an alien thought comes during prayer or learning, one should use it as a stepping stone to connect to who sent the thought, the Creator. He's the one that sent the alien thought or the alien desire. He is given the opportunity to correct these seemingly damaging and corrupted thoughts and desires and raise it up. Give it back to the Creator and connect to Him. By metaphor, when a son returns from school and learns with his father, and the father asks him all sorts of questions and difficulties, it's not in order to damage him, rather develop and help him progress. Channukah is also on the weekday, when work, malacha, can be done, aside from the 30 minutes after lighting the candles. That should be a time of enjoying the candle, meditating, praying for the maximum connection and all that we need, both for ourselves and more importantly, for all of Klal Yisrael, for all of the world. This is coming to say that we need to sanctify the mundane. The fact that Chanukah mostly happens during the week and we can still do malacha. It's not a chol hamoed like other high holidays. Therefore, to connect and sanctify all matters, this is a big work, as being the light worker that is a Jew, Bnei Israel. To acknowledge there is nothing but the Creator. There is no such thing as Sitra Achra, no despair in the world, no true dissensions and fallings in the world, as in truth they are all vessels for elevation. So if all the suffering are vessels to elevate, then there's no true dissension. There might seem to be stops on the road, which is also related to Channukah, Chaniya, Chanu, park, Ko, here, park here, reflect on the year that passed, reflect on the year that you want to draw, what's to come. Look inside, see the inner work for what it is, and decide for oneself. What do you want? What do we want? Hopefully, Creator. Says Rabbeinu Bal HaSulam, quoting the Baal Shem Tov, that one who says there is such a thing as Sitra Achra in the world is an idol worshiper. Aside from the Creator, there is nothing else. He is the absolute good, who loves us with a supernal, perfect love. Therefore, we need to remember this. Think about it again and again, in order to connect and strengthen our connection with Hashem, as He wants us to connect to Him. He wants us close, and this is done by means of the lowly states. There's no other way. To go to the peaks and troughs of our inner work. So the Rebbe Shita says that a person needs to say something along the lines of, "My dear Father in heaven, I know that you gave me this dissension and all the suffering I've been through in the world. I know this is from your love, and I thank you for all that you've sent me. Please return me and bring me close, as I know there is nothing else other than you. And I have no strength whatsoever to truly connect to you. So please save me. Give me the strength." The outer definition of our lives is Torah and mitzvot. But the inner intention needs to be acquisition of similarity to the Creator and thank Him for every single matter. And relaying a prayer that I just shared from the words of the Rebbe Shita is an example of that inner intention, the true purpose of our lives is to elevate and connect ourselves to Source, to build ourselves in loving the other, and building an atmosphere to construct this love. And perhaps this is one of the ideas regarding the Or Haganuz, the hidden light the Creator stored away for the righteous in the future. Ganuz is spelled Gan, meaning garden, and Uz, Vav and Zayin, which is the gematria of 13. The gematria of 13 is both Ahava, love, and Echad, one. It is the light of perfection, the light of Mashiach, the light of Geula, the light of redemption, the ultimate light of total union with the Creator. Hence, Ganuz can be interpreted to being Gan Echad, the garden of one, or Gan Ahava, the garden of love, being the highest states of consciousness, loving the other as yourself and loving our Creator. I won't get so into it, but in Chassidus, Zot Chanukah in particular, the last day of Chanukah, which is a culmination of all the lights from all the Chanukas ever in existence to that exact point, is extremely high, and according to Chassidus, is sometimes compared to Yom Kippur. And relative to this idea of the Organuz, if we're to interpret this as being the state of consciousness that we call the garden of love, the garden of oneness, that sounds to me like the light of Mashiach, the ultimate Or Yechidah, the unified consciousness where anything and everything that's ever happened, happens and will happen is only the Creator's goodness. And to be involved and ensconced in that day to day, to draw from that consciousness on Hanukkah into the now, to pray for that. And this is perhaps why the Organus is connected to Hanukkah, as described. That we desire to draw the light of oneness and love, and the desire can only be manifest by means of the awareness of our invalid nature, being our egoism. But one needs to know The more serious they are in their inner work, the body, being the ego self, comes with questions, challenges, and difficulties in order to create the need for Hashem in a person. The body, the ego, is employing a mechanism in order to make us cry out. If it wasn't hard for us, we wouldn't need the Creator. We would just go up and up and up and think of ourselves as God. God forbid. And that's why the true success in life is based on the two true values of Emunah and Ahava, faith and love. And to come to the position of not being successful in itself is successful, as He is drawing us closer to admitting that we need the Creator, nothing more. Again, the awareness that I am not successful to rise above my ego is in itself success, because who is even aware of that state of being? That in itself is a great success. Which is why, as bitter as it sounds, there is no state of being more precious to the Creator than a person's feeling of absolute despair in regards to his inner work, as that can inspire the true prayer, the Umkadaliba, from the depths of the heart. And if a person successfully reaches this true prayer, where they admit they can't live without Hashem's help to bring them out of their egoism, then they experience the miracle of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of exiting Egypt. Or in our case, the miracle of defeating the Greeks, despite being the minority and the weak ones. Hence, we must always be focused towards Hashem and ask ourselves all the time, what does the Creator want from me? To meditate and imagine the Creator's greatness before me and arouse a feeling of His greatness and awe. A Jew doesn't need to do matters in order to find grace in the eyes of others. We're not here to impress anyone, rather only to give pleasure to the Creator for following His will. We must find chen, grace, in Elohim and man, meaning the Creator first, and by means of finding grace in the Creator's eyes, that means we come to a pleasant state of consciousness, being the state of giving. We find chen in His eyes, that means He has grace upon us and therefore is giving us the strength and capacity to reach those higher states of giving. That's called grace. And by definition of reaching that level by means of the chen, so too will be pleasant in other people's eyes as well, because we'll be giving and loving, as we should be. Chen is also the same letters as Noach, which is said to be an acronym for Ner Channukah, Nun Chet, candles of Channukah. By means of the intentions we spoke about in this lesson, being the acknowledgement of the invalidness of the ego and contrast the desired altruism, may we find grace, chen, in the eyes of Hashem, to bestow us the strength to scream out to Him more and more, connecting deeper and deeper until we ourselves reach a state of Ner Channukah, Ner Hashem, Nishmat Adam, so we can reach a state of Noach, of being at rest just like he is, because we want to be in similarity form. The law is every branch wants to be like its root. We're the olive branch that wants to be like the Creator. We want to come to Shalom Olam, as described. A state of rest, of perfection, becoming one with Him, coming to Shalom Olam, us ourselves being in Olam, coming to Shalom, forever being with Him, in the garden of oneness, meaning to be in a state of consciousness where we're one with Him, to be in the garden of love. Channukah Sameach, happy Channukah. May we all merit to reveal the great lights that are already within. All the best. Thank you, Reb Tzvi. Always a pleasure.